The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital Cath Lab burned cold and bright as Dr. Elena Brooks pushed through the swinging doors. Her scrubs clung to her skin from the hurried jog down the corridor, but her breathing was steady, her dark eyes focused. At 34, the Black American cardiothoracic surgeon had earned her reputation the hard way, saving hearts that other doctors had already mentally buried. Dr. Brooks. VIP in Bay 1, the charge nurse said, voice tight with urgency. Massive MI, complete occlusion of the LAD and 2 major branches. He coded once in the ambulance. They got him back. But he's circling the drain. We need you now. Elena pulled on sterile gloves without breaking stride. Name: Alexander Grant, the tech billionaire. His people are already calling the chief of staff demanding the best. The clipboard nearly slipped from her fingers. Alexander Grant. 9 years since she'd last heard that name spoken in anything but bitter silence. 9 years since the divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, a polite lie for the truth he'd hurled at her across their marble kitchen island. You're barren. Elena, I need heirs. This marriage is over. She remembered the exact pitch of his voice, ice over steel. The way he'd straightened his cufflinks before delivering the final blow. The way he'd already lined up Victoria Langford, the perfect society blonde from old money, whose fertility was apparently proven. Elena's pulse hammered, but her hands remained rock steady as she entered the procedure suite. The patient lay intubated on the table, monitors screaming warnings. Nurses and techs moved in practiced chaos. She took her place at the head, eyes sweeping the angiograms projected on the wall screens. The heart on display was dying, and it belonged to the man who'd once promised to love her forever. 10 blade, she said calmly. The first incision was clean, precise, blood-welled, bright and accusing. As she cracked the sternum and exposed the barely beating organ, memory flooded in uninvited. They'd met 12 years earlier at a charity gala in Silicon Valley. She was a third-year medical resident, exhausted and out of place among tech titans. He was 30, already a billionaire, after his AI startup went public. Alexander Grant. White, charming, impossibly handsome, with storm gray eyes and a smile that made people want to believe in him. He'd found her hiding near the dessert table, nursing a club soda. You look like you're calculating how many lives one overpriced cupcake could save, he'd teased. She'd laughed despite herself. At least 3 vaccinations in sub-Saharan Africa. They talked until the gala ended. He asked for her number with old-fashioned sincerity, courted her with poetry texted at 3 a.m., flowers delivered to the hospital, quiet dinners where he actually listened as she spoke about her dreams of becoming a surgeon. When he proposed a year later under the Golden Gate Bridge at sunset, she'd believed in fairy tales again. The marriage lasted 3 years. 3 years of negative tests, invasive treatments, miscarriages that left her hollowed out. 3 years of watching the man she loved turn into someone she didn't recognize, someone obsessed with legacy, with producing a Grant heir to inherit the empire his grandfather built. The night it ended. She'd sat in their Pacific Heights mansion, clutching the 15th negative test. He'd stood in the doorway of his study, tie loosened, exhaustion etched into his perfect features. We're done trying, he'd said. I can't wait forever. You mean I can't give you forever, she'd whispered. He hadn't denied it. You're brilliant, Elena. Beautiful. Any man would be lucky. But not you. She'd stood, trembling. Because I can't give you children. He'd looked away. Legacy matters. The board. My family they expect. I'm your wife, Alexander. Not a breeding program. His jaw tightened. I've already spoken to Victoria Langford's father. The words had punched the air from her lungs. You've already chosen my replacement. I'm being practical. She'd walked out that night with nothing but a suitcase and the clothes on her back. He'd been generous in the settlement. Guilt money wired into an account she barely touched. 3 weeks later, alone in her tiny rented apartment, she'd stared at a positive pregnancy test and cried until dawn. Triplets. After everything, she never told him. Now, 9 years later, she held his heart in her hands literally. Cross-clamp, she ordered. The team moved seamlessly. She harvested veins from his leg, grafted them with microscopic precision around the blocked arteries. Every suture was perfect. Every decision, life-preserving. Because that's who she was now. Not the broken wife he'd discarded. Dr. Elena Brooks, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. The surgeon's CEOs and presidents flew in for. The mother who'd raised 3 extraordinary children alone while conquering one of the most brutal medical specialties. 4 hours later, she closed his chest. Vitals strong, the anesthesiologist announced. Beautiful work, Dr. Brooks. She stripped off her gloves, gaze lingering on Alexander's unconscious face. Older now, silver, threading his dark hair. Stress lines carved deep. Still devastatingly handsome, till the man who'd called her defective. In recovery. Elena checked his chart one last time before leaving. A nurse approached hesitantly. His wife is here, Victoria Grant. She's demanding an update. Elena's stomach twisted. Of course. The replacement had become the wife. And from the society pages, Elena studiously avoided. She knew Victoria was 7 months pregnant with the heir Alexander had wanted so desperately. She walked into the private waiting room. Victoria Langford Grant stood the moment Elena entered, tall, blonde, immaculately pregnant, in a designer maternity dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. Diamonds glittered at her throat. Her hand rested protectively on her belly. You're the surgeon. Victoria's tone was polished ice. Dr. Elena Brooks, your husband's surgery was successful. Triple bypass. He'll need weeks of recovery. Cardiac rehab. Lifestyle changes. When can he return to work? Victoria interrupted. He has board meetings. The Langford Foundation Gala. He nearly died today. Elena's voice stayed professional, but steel threaded through it. His heart stopped. Stress is his enemy now. Work can wait. His life can't. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand fluttered dismissively. Alexander thrives on pressure. It's who he is. It's what almost killed him. Something flickered in Victoria's eyes. Calculation. Perhaps recognition. Brooks. She repeated slowly. Elena Brooks. Why does that name? Elena turned to leave. Later, in the family lounge, 3 familiar voices called her name. Mommy, Ava, Ethan, and Mia, her 8-year-old triplets, launched themselves at her. Ava's dark curls bounced as she hugged Elena's waist. Ethan, ever the serious one, clutched a science fair ribbon. Mia held a handmade card, covered in hearts. What are you 3 doing here? Elena knelt, drinking in their faces. Ava had Alexander's gray eyes and stubborn chin. Ethan, his analytical intensity. Mia, his quiet thoughtfulness, tempered with Elena's empathy. Grandma dropped us off after art class, Ava explained. You had that emergency surgery, remember? Elena's heart stuttered. They were in the same hospital as their father, floors apart, worlds apart. How did it go? Ethan asked, peering up at her. Patient will be fine. She forced a smile. Hungry. Starving, Mia declared. As they walked toward the cafeteria, Elena glanced back toward the ICU. A tall figure in a hospital gown stood at the window of his room, watching. Alexander. Even from this distance, she saw the moment recognition hit him. His hand pressed against the glass. His mouth formed her name. She turned away quickly, guiding her children down the hall. That night, Elena sat in her modest San Francisco home, tucking the triplets into bed. Ava's room was a riot of paint and canvases. Ethan's lined with books and gadget prototypes. Mia's filled with notebooks of stories. Tell us about the surgery again, Mia begged, clutching her stuffed whale. It was like fixing a broken engine, Elena said softly, very carefully, so it could run strong again. Like when you fixed my bike, Ethan asked. Exactly like that. After kisses and lights out, Elena poured herself a glass of wine she didn't drink and stared at old photos on her phone. One from their first anniversary, Alexander laughing as he smeared wedding cake on her nose. Another from the night he proposed. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Elena. His voice was rough from the breathing tube. It's me. She closed her eyes. You're supposed to be resting. I saw them. The children. They're mine. Silence stretched between them like a chasm. They're mine, she said finally. I raised them, loved them, protected them. Elena, please. You threw us away. Alexander, you don't get to walk back in because death knocked. I was wrong. Raw anguish cracked his words. About everything. I was scared and stupid and good night, Mr. Grant. She hung up, but sleep didn't come. Instead, memories did of the man who'd once held her through failed IVF cycles, whispering they'd adopt. They'd figure it out together. The man who'd disappeared behind ambition and legacy. Her phone lit again. Text this time. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but they have my eyes. Please, let me know them. Let me make this right. She deleted the message. The next morning, Alexander was sitting up in bed when she made rounds. Victoria was there, scrolling her phone, belly prominently displayed. Darling, the doctor's here, Victoria said without looking up. Elena checked vitals clinically. You're progressing well. We'll move you out of ICU tomorrow. Alexander's gaze never left her face. Thank you for saving my life. You were a patient in my hospital. Victoria finally glanced up. We're grateful, of course. Alexander's assistant is arranging private nurses for home. He'll stay the full course here. Elena cut in. Rushing recovery risks another event. Victoria bristled. Alexander silenced her with a look. When Victoria stepped out to take a call, he spoke quietly. I never stopped loving you. Elena's pen stilled on the chart. You stopped showing it the moment I couldn't give you what you wanted. I was an idiot. I thought legacy meant bloodlines and board seats. Not. His voice cracked. Not the incredible woman who built an empire of her own while raising 3 perfect children alone. She met his eyes. Those gray eyes mirrored in Ava's face. You don't know them. I want to. You gave up that right when you called me defective. He flinched as if struck. I'll never forgive myself for that. Good, she said softly. You shouldn't. She left the room. But in the hallway, her hands shook. Because beneath the righteous anger, something else stirred, something dangerous and familiar. Hope. And Elena Brooks knew better than anyone how deadly hope could be when misplaced. 2 weeks had passed since the surgery, and Alexander Grant's private ICU room had become a revolving door of executives on video calls, assistants delivering encrypted laptops, and Victoria sweeping in daily with fresh flowers and fresh demands. Elena avoided rounds when she could, delegating to her residents, but protocol and her own stubborn professionalism required her presence for major updates. This morning, she found Alexander alone, sitting up in bed, staring out the window at the San Francisco fog. An untouched breakfast tray sat on the rolling table. He looked thinner, the hospital gown swallowing his broad shoulders. The silver in his hair caught the light like frost. "You're off the critical list," she said from the doorway, chart in hand. "We'll move you to the cardiac step-down unit tomorrow. Cardiac rehab starts next week." He turned, those storm-gray eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made the room feel smaller. "Thank you, Elena. It's Dr. Brooks." He nodded slowly, accepting the boundary. "Dr. Brooks, I know you didn't have to take my case. You could have handed me off." "I don't hand off patients because of personal history." She stepped closer, checking the monitor readings. "I save lives. That's the job. Even when the life belongs to someone who destroyed yours." Her hand paused on the blood pressure cuff. "Especially then. Proves I'm not the defective one." The words landed like a scalpel clean, deep. Alexander flinched. "I deserved that. You deserve worse." Silence stretched. Then, quietly, I saw them again yesterday, in the garden courtyard. The girl, Ava, was painting the fountain. The boys were building something with sticks. A bridge, I think. Elena's heart stuttered. The hospital's small outdoor garden was a favorite spot for the triplets when they visited after school. "You were watching them." "I was watching you with them." His voice softened. "The way you knelt so Ava could show you her painting. How Ethan explained his bridge design like a tiny engineer. How Mia read you a page from her notebook and you listened like it was the most important story in the world." He looked at her, then really looked, and Elena felt exposed under the fluorescent lights. "You're an incredible mother. Don't," the word came out sharper than intended, "don't romanticize what you never helped build." I'm grieving what I missed." He swallowed. "I keep thinking about birthdays I wasn't there for. First steps. First words. The night terrors. The fevers. The everything. You chose not to be there. I chose wrong." Victoria chose that moment to arrive, heels clicking authoritatively down the hall. She entered in a cloud of Chanel and entitlement, carrying a garment bag. "Darling, I brought proper pajamas. These hospital things are dreadful." She laid the bag across the chair, then noticed Elena. "Oh, doctor, any news on discharge? Mr. Grant needs at least another week inpatient, followed by outpatient rehab." Elena repeated for the 3rd time. "Rushing it risks another event." Victoria's smile was tight. "We have private physicians on retainer. I'm sure they can manage his recovery at home." "Private physicians didn't perform his bypass. I did. He stays until I clear him." Alexander watched the exchange, something unreadable flickering across his face. Victoria placed a possessive hand on his shoulder. "Alexander, the board is restless. They need your presence at the quarterly strategy meeting next Friday." "I nearly died, Victoria." "And you didn't," she said smoothly, "which means life continues. The company doesn't run itself." Elena turned to leave. "Dr. Brooks," Alexander called. "Could we speak privately? Just 2 minutes." Victoria's brows shot up. Darling, please. Victoria hesitated, then gathered her purse with exaggerated grace. I'll get coffee. 2 minutes. The door clicked shut. Alexander leaned forward, wincing slightly. I need to ask something that's none of my business. Then don't. Are they happy? The question caught her off guard. My children. Our children. His voice was barely above a whisper. Are they happy? Elena stared at him. 9 years of armor. And he'd found a crack. Yes, she said finally. They're happy. Secure. Loved beyond measure. Relief and pain warred on his face. Do they ask about their father? I told them he couldn't be part of our lives. That it wasn't their fault. That some people aren't ready to be parents. He closed his eyes. And now the universe drops me on your operating table. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Elena. He stopped. Doctor? Brooks, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I'm asking, begging, for a chance to meet them. Once. Supervised. Whatever conditions you set. No. Please. You think one meeting fixes 9 years of absence of me holding them through nightmares, teaching them to ride bikes, kissing scraped knees, explaining why some daddies leave. I know it doesn't fix anything, but keeping them from me punishes them too. They deserve to know they're not a secret. Elena's chest tightened. He wasn't wrong, and that made it worse. I need to think. Hope flared in his eyes. That's more than I deserve. Victoria returned before Elena could respond, ending the conversation. That night, Elena sat at the kitchen table long after the triplets were asleep. Ava's latest painting, a swirling night sky, full of emotions, as colors leaned against the fruit bowl. Ethan's science fair project blueprint was spread beside it. Mia's newest story, handwritten in purple ink, lay open to a page about a lost prince searching for his real family. Her phone buzzed. Alexander again. I won't push, but if you ever decide yes, I'll follow every rule. I just want to see them smile up close. She didn't reply. 3 days later, Alexander suffered another episode. Elena was paged to the cardiac ward at 2 a.m. He was in acute distress chest pain, elevated troponins, unstable rhythm, stress-induced ischemia. Victoria met her outside the room, makeup flawless despite the hour, eyes red from crying or rage Elena couldn't tell. He was fine, Victoria hissed. Then he got a phone call and collapsed. What call? Something about the divorce papers being ready. Victoria's voice cracked. He's been distant, talking about mistakes. I thought it was post-trauma depression. Elena's blood ran cold. Inside, Alexander was pale against the white sheets, oxygen mask fogging with each breath. She adjusted the nitroglycerin drip herself. His eyes found hers through the mask. Fear. Real fear. Stay with me, he rasped. I'm here. Victoria hovered. Fix him. You fixed him before. Elena ignored her, focusing on monitors. The rhythm stabilized. Slowly. When the crisis passed, Victoria stepped out to call the board chair. Alexander pulled off the mask. I'm leaving her. That's not my concern. I know. But I need you to understand. I'm not doing it to win you back. I'm doing it because I can't live another day pretending. The life I built after you, it's hollow. Elena checked his pulse manually, avoiding his gaze. I saw a lawyer yesterday. He continued quietly. Divorce papers are drafted. I'll support the baby fully. But I can't stay married to someone I don't love. You're having a child together. And I'll be a father to that child. From a distance, like I should have been. His voice broke. Like I want to be to Ava, Ethan, and Mia. Elena's hand stilled on his wrist. If I die tonight, he whispered, I'll never have met them. Never told them I'm sorry I wasn't there. Please, Elena, one meeting. If I survive this, one supervised hour. That's all I'm asking. She looked at him, really looked. The arrogant CEO was gone. In his place was a man stripped bare, facing mortality and regret in equal measure. You're not dying tonight, but if I do, you won't. He searched her face. Does that mean one meeting? She said, the words tasting like surrender and mercy at once. Supervised, neutral location. You hurt them even a little, and it's over forever. Tears gathered in his eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. They don't know who you are, and I haven't decided if they ever will. Victoria returned then, ending the moment. But later, alone in the on-call room, Elena stared at the ceiling. She'd just opened a door she'd sworn would stay locked forever. And she had no idea if she was protecting her children, or finally giving them the chance to heal a wound they didn't even know they carried. The next afternoon, Alexander was stable enough for the garden courtyard. Elena watched from a bench as he sat stiffly on a picnic table, waiting. The triplets arrived with their grandmother, chattering about school. Elena's heart pounded. Kids, she called softly, come here a minute. They gathered around her. There's someone I'd like you to meet, a friend from work. His name is Mr. Grant. Ava tilted her head. Is he the patient you saved? Yes. Ethan frowned. Why do you look scared? Mommy, trust children to see everything. I'm not scared. She lied. Just careful. Mia slipped her small hand into Elena's. We'll be good. Elena led them over. Alexander stood slowly, carefully, and Elena saw the moment he truly saw them up close. His breath caught. Eyes glistened. Hello, he said, voice rough. I'm Alexander. Ava studied him with artist's intensity. You have eyes like mine. Ethan squinted. And my chin. Mia smiled shyly. Hi. And just like that, the impossible began. Golden Gate Park, on a Saturday morning, smelled of eucalyptus and fresh coffee from nearby carts. Children shouted on the playground. Kites dotted the sky. And the sun filtered through fog that was finally burning off. Elena sat on a bench near the children's carousel, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had chosen this spot deliberately public, neutral, full of escape routes if needed. The triplets ran ahead toward the picnic table she'd pointed out, curiosity outweighing caution. Alexander was already there. He stood when they approached, tall and careful in jeans and a simple gray sweater that made him look less like a billionaire and more like a man trying not to frighten small birds. His posture was uncertain, hands open at his sides, no expensive watch, no cufflinks, nothing to remind her of the man who once dismissed her over scotch in a mansion that felt like a museum. Ava reached the table first, sketchbook clutched to her chest like armor. Hi again, Mr. Grant. Right, she asked, testing the name. That's right. His voice was gentle. Hi, Ava. She blinked. You remember my name? I remember everything from the garden. He glanced at the boys. Ethan, Mia. Thank you for coming. Ethan hung back half a step, assessing. Mom said you wanted to meet us. Why? Direct, always direct. Alexander looked at Elena for permission. She gave the smallest nod. He crouched to their level, wincing slightly at the pull on his healing chest. "Because I think you're extraordinary," he said simply. "And because your mom is the most remarkable person I've ever known. I wanted to meet the 3 people she loves most in the world." Mia tilted her head. "Do you work with Mommy at the hospital?" "I did, recently. She saved my life." Ava's eyes widened. "You're the heart patient." Alexander smiled faintly. "Guilty." Ethan frowned. "Then you should be resting. Mom says recovery is serious." "I'm following every rule," Alexander promised. "Especially today." I didn't want to miss this. Elena remained standing a few paces away, arms folded, watching every micro-expression on her children's faces, ready to end it at the first sign of distress. Alexander gestured to the picnic table. "I brought some things, only if you're interested." On the table sat juice boxes, fresh strawberries, a small box of colored pencils, a beginner robotics kit, and 3 blank hardcover notebooks with elegant leather covers. Ava's gaze locked on the pencils, Ethan's on the robotics, Mia's on the notebooks. "I wasn't sure what you'd like," Alexander said softly, "so I guessed." Mia touched a notebook reverently. "These are for stories. I thought maybe, or drawings, or inventions, or whatever you want." Ethan picked up the robotics box. "This is the new Snapdragon Learner set. It's not even in stores yet." Alexander shrugged, almost shy. "I know some people." Ava was already opening the pencils, testing colors on the corner of her sketchbook. "These are professional grade. Mom only lets me use these on special paper." Elena felt her throat tighten. He'd done his homework. Carefully, thoughtfully. They sat. The children claimed spots across from him, Elena beside Mia close enough to intervene. For the first few minutes, conversation was cautious. Favorite subjects at school, whether 3rd grade was harder than 2nd, the merits of chocolate versus strawberry milk. Then Ava asked, "Do you like art?" "I love it," Alexander said, "though I'm terrible at making it. I collect paintings sometimes, but mostly I just like looking." "What kind?" "Ones that make you feel something, like the night sky you were painting in the garden, all those colors for different emotions. I've never seen anything like it." Ava beamed, suddenly shy. She flipped open her sketchbook and slid it across. A new piece, a heart made of swirling blues and golds, cracked down the middle, but held together by glowing threads. "It's about fixing things," she said quietly, "even when they're really broken." Alexander studied it for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were glassy. "It's beautiful, Ava, and true." Ethan, never one to be left out, launched into a detailed explanation of the bridge he and his brother had tried to build in the courtyard with sticks. Alexander listened with the focus he once reserved for boardroom pitches, asking precise questions that made Ethan light up. Mia, quietest of the 3, finally spoke. "Do you read stories?" "Every chance I get." She pulled a folded sheet from her pocket. Her newest story, handwritten. "I wrote this last night. It's about a man who gets lost in a storm and finds a lighthouse he didn't know was there." Alexander took the page like it was fragile glass. He read slowly, lips moving slightly. When he finished, he looked at Mia with something close to awe. "This is incredible. The way you describe the storm, I could feel the wind. And the ending, where the lighthouse keeper turns out to be someone he knew long ago. That's..." He cleared his throat. "That's exactly how stories should end. With hope, eh?" Mia smiled, small but radiant. An hour passed like minutes. Laughter, actual laughter from her children, from Alexander. Elena watched, conflicted, as barriers dissolved in real time. Then Ava asked the question Elena had dreaded. "Why do you look like us?" The air stilled. Alexander froze, looked at Elena again. She inhaled slowly. They were ready, or as ready as they'd ever be. "Because," Elena said, voice steady, "Mr. Grant is your father." 3 small faces turned to her, then to him. Ethan spoke first, analytical as always. "Biological father." "Yes," Mia whispered, "the one who couldn't be part of our lives." Elena nodded. Ava stared at Alexander. "Why are you here now?" He answered before Elena could. "Because I made terrible mistakes a long time ago. I hurt your mom very badly. I didn't know about you. She found out she was pregnant after I left. She raised you alone, and she did the most incredible job. I only learned you existed when I got sick, and your mom saved my life." Ethan's brow furrowed. "So you didn't want us?" Pain flashed across Alexander's face. "I wanted children more than anything. That's why I made the worst mistake of my life. I thought your mom couldn't have them, and I let that matter more than loving her. I was wrong about everything. I didn't know you existed until a few weeks ago." Mia's voice was small. "Do you want us now?" Alexander's answer came instantly, raw, "More than I've ever wanted anything. But only if you want me. I don't deserve to be your dad just because of biology. I have to earn it. And if you decide you don't want me around, I'll respect that." Silence. Then Ava slid her cracked heart drawing across the table to him. "You can keep this," she said, "if you want." He took it with trembling fingers. "I'll treasure it." Ethan asked, "Will you come to my science fair next month? I'm building a real bridge, with load-bearing calculations. I wouldn't miss it." Mia added quietly, "You could read the next chapter, if you want." "I want." Elena felt tears threaten. She blinked them back fiercely. Alexander looked at her over their heads. "Thank you," he mouthed. She didn't respond. Couldn't yet. The meeting ended with tentative hugs, Ava first, then Mia. Ethan offering a solemn handshake that turned into a hug when Alexander crouched again. As they walked away, the children chattered excitedly. "He's nice. Mommy, he really listened. He liked my story." Elena glanced back once. Alexander still sat at the table, staring at Ava's drawing, shoulders shaking with silent emotion. That night, after tucking the children in after answering 100 questions with as much honesty as 8-year-olds could handle, Elena poured herself tea and sat on the porch. Her phone lit with a text. "Today was the best day of my life. Thank you for giving me that gift. I will never take it for granted. Whatever boundaries you need, I'll honor them." Hey, she stared at the message a long time, then typed back one step at a time. His reply was immediate. "All the time you need." Inside, Ava had hung a new drawing on the fridge, 5 stick figures holding hands under a golden sky. 1 taller man, 1 woman in scrubs, 3 children. Underneath, in careful block letters, "My family." The question mark broke Elena's heart a little, and healed it too. She didn't have answers yet. Trust was a long road, forgiveness even longer. But for the first time in 9 years, the road didn't feel impossible. 6 months had passed since the park meeting, and Alexander Grant's life had quietly, irrevocably changed. The divorce from Victoria was final. It had been messy in the tabloids' headlines about the billionaire abandoning his pregnant wife for his secret past, but Alexander refused to engage. He provided generously for the child, a boy named Theodore. and visited weekly in supervised settings similar to the ones Elena once imposed on him. He was learning. Slowly. What fatherhood required when you started late. With Ava, Ethan, and Mia, he showed up every time. He sat front row at Ethan's science fair, applauding louder than anyone when the boys' miniature suspension bridge held 50 pounds without swaying. He framed Ava's emotional landscapes and hung them in his otherwise minimalist penthouse, telling visitors they were by the most important artist in the world. He read every chapter of Mia's ongoing adventure serial, offering thoughtful notes that made her revise with delight instead of defensiveness. And he never missed a weekend. Today was a Saturday in early December, crisp air carrying the scent of pine from holiday wreaths on street lamps. They were at the Exploratorium, Elena's choice, for neutral ground that still felt like an adventure. The children raced ahead through the interactive exhibits, laughter echoing off high ceilings. Alexander walked beside Elena, hands in his coat pockets, careful not to crowd her space. "You didn't have to buy out the entire membership level," she said dryly, glancing at the Platinum Family Pass he'd quietly upgraded for them. "I wanted you to come any time, without thinking about cost." She didn't argue. Money had never been the issue between them. It was what he'd once valued over everything else. They watched Mia at a Soundwave exhibit, pressing buttons to make laser patterns dance. Alexander crouched beside her. "What if the hero in your story used sound as a weapon?" he asked. "Like turning a whisper into a shield." Mia's eyes lit, or a lullaby that puts the monsters to sleep. Exactly. Elena felt the familiar ache sweet now, instead of sharp. He was good with them. Patient. Present. The man she'd married had reemerged, stripped of arrogance and urgency. Later, over hot chocolate in the cafe overlooking the bay, the children plotted their next exhibit assault. Alexander turned to Elena. "I have something to ask. You can say no." She arched a brow. "That's never stopped you before." He smiled faintly. "Fair. But this time I'll accept it." He pulled a small envelope from his coat. Inside were 4 tickets to the Nutcracker Prime seats, plus backstage passes Ava had mentioned wanting after her school's holiday performance. "I thought we could go together, as a family." He said the last words carefully. Testing. Elena studied him. 6 months of consistency. No grand gestures beyond thoughtful ones. No pressure about them. Just steady, quiet showing up. "Yes," she said finally. "We'd like that." Relief softened his features. "Thank you." Ethan returned then, dragging Alexander to see a Gravity Well exhibit. Ava and Mia followed, claiming his hands. Elena watched them go, her children pulling their father through the crowd, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But space. Room for possibility. That night, after dropping the exhausted triplets at home, Alexander lingered on the porch. "I should go," he said, but didn't move. Elena leaned against the doorframe. "You always say that." "Because I never want to overstay." She studied his face in the porch light. Older. Kinder. The lines around his eyes were from smiling at childish jokes now, not boardroom stress. "You've been patient," she admitted. "I've had 9 years to learn what impatience cost me." Silence settled, comfortable for the first time. "Alexander," she said quietly, using his name intentionally. "I'm not ready for more, but I'm not closed anymore." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. "That's more than I hoped." He stepped back down the path, pausing at the gate. "Good night, Elena." "Good night." She watched him drive away, In the understated electric sedan, he'd switched to no more flashy sports cars, then closed the door. Inside, the house was quiet. On the fridge, Ava's family drawing had evolved. The question mark was gone. In its place, careful block letters. My family. 2 weeks later, the Nutcracker. The children were dressed up, Ava in a velvet dress the color of midnight, Ethan in his first suit grumbling about the tie, Mia twirling in tulle. Elena wore simple black that made her feel powerful. Alexander met them in the lobby, handsome in a tailored tuxedo, holding a single white rose for each of them. For my dates, he said gravely, handing the largest to Elena last. Her fingers brushed his as she took it. The ballet was magical. Ava gasped at the snowflakes. Ethan tried to figure out the stage mechanics. Mia clutched Alexander's hand during the sugar plum fairy pas de deux, whispering, "That's how love should look." Afterward, backstage, the children met dancers and held real point shoes. Alexander took photos, hundreds capturing every expression. On the drive home, the triplets fell asleep in the back of his car, seats properly boosted. Elena glanced at him across the console. "You're good at this. I'm learning from the best." At the house, he carried sleeping Mia inside, while Elena managed the other two. They tucked them in together, a practiced rhythm now. In the hallway, Alexander paused. "I have one more thing." He handed her a small box, no ribbon, no flourish. Inside was a delicate gold necklace, a thin chain with 4 tiny, intertwined hearts. "One for each of us," he said quietly. "No pressure. Just when you're ready to wear it." Elena's throat tightened. "It's beautiful." She didn't put it on, but she didn't give it back either. At the door, snow rare for San Francisco began to fall in lazy flakes. Alexander looked up, then at her. "I love you, Elena. I never stopped. I just forgot how to show it." She stepped closer, close enough to see snow melting in his hair. "I know." He waited. She rose on her toes and pressed a soft, brief kiss to his cheek. "Thank you for coming back." His eyes closed at the contact. When he opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "Merry Christmas, Elena." "Merry Christmas, Alexander." He walked to his car through the gentle snow. She watched until the taillights disappeared, then touched the box in her pocket. Inside, the children slept peacefully, dreaming of sugar plums and bridges that held. Upstairs, Elena opened her bedroom window to let in the cold air. Snowflakes drifted onto the sill. She took out the necklace, held it to the light. 4 hearts, linked but distinct. She fastened it around her neck. The clasp clicked softly in the quiet house. Not a promise, not yet, but a beginning. Down the street, Alexander sat in his parked car, watching the faint glow of her bedroom window until it went dark. He smiled, small, hopeful, and drove home through the rare San Francisco snow. Tomorrow would come, and the day after, he would show up for all of them. Time, consistency, love. He finally understood the order. And for the first time in 9 years, both houses held the same quiet peace, the sound of a family breathing in sync, even if still in separate rooms. Healing, slowly, stronger in the broken places. 1 year after the snow on Christmas Eve, the backyard of Elena's San Francisco home glowed under strings of warm white lights woven through the old oak tree. Tables draped in ivory linen held simple centerpieces of pine branches, white roses, and flickering candles. It was small, only 30 guests, but every seat was filled with people who had witnessed the long road back. Elena stood in the master bedroom, smoothing the skirt of her wedding dress. Not the elaborate gown from her first marriage to Alexander. This one was simpler. Soft champagne silk that skimmed her figure. Off-the-shoulder sleeves. A gentle train that whispered when she moved. Her mother fastened the clasp of the gold necklace Alexander had given her a year ago. The 4 intertwined hearts, now a permanent fixture against her skin. "You look like peace," her mother said, eyes misty. Elena smiled at the mirror. "I feel like it." Downstairs, the triplets, now 9, bounced with barely contained excitement. Ava wore a midnight blue velvet dress, hair curled loosely with a white rose pinned above one ear. Ethan tugged at his silver-gray tie, but stood tall in his miniature tuxedo. Mia twirled in pale lavender tulle, clutching a basket of rose petals. Alexander waited under the oak with the officiant, a soft smile playing on his lips every time he glanced toward the house. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, no tie open at the collar. Relaxed in a way the old Alexander never allowed himself to be. His hair had more silver now, but it suited him. The heart attack and everything after had aged him into someone steadier, kinder. Music started, a string quartet playing an acoustic version of the song from their first dance 12 years earlier. The guests rose. First came the children. Ava walked slowly, scattering petals with artistic flourish. Ethan carried the rings on a small velvet pillow, expressions serious, until he caught Alexander's eye and grinned. Mia followed, beaming at everyone, petals flying a little too enthusiastically. Then Elena appeared on the porch steps. Alexander's breath caught visibly. He didn't try to hide it. She walked alone, no one giving her away this time, because this marriage was her choice, fully and freely made. Her mother followed a few steps behind, as matron of honor. When Elena reached him, Alexander took her hands. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "You're here," she answered. "That's enough." The officiant smiled and began. "We gather today not to witness the start of a marriage, but its renewal. These 2 people have walked through fire apart and together, and have chosen to stand here again, wiser, humbler, and more deeply in love than before." The vows were their own. Alexander spoke first, voice steady but thick with emotion. "Elena, 12 years ago I promised to love you in sickness and in health, and I failed you when the sickness was hardest. I let fear and pride blind me to the miracle standing right in front of me. I lost 9 years with you and with our children, years I can never get back. But you gave me the gift of the rest of our lives. Today, I promise, with everything I am, to show up every single day, to choose you and our family over everything else, to listen when it's hard, to stay when it's easier to leave, and to love you the way you have always deserved with my whole heart, repaired and stronger because you held it in your hands. I love you. Today, tomorrow, always." Elena's eyes shone, but her voice didn't waver. "Alexander, you broke my heart once, and then, slowly, patiently, you helped me rebuild it. You showed up for bedtime stories and science fairs, for tears and triumphs, for every ordinary day that makes a family real. You earned your way back, not with grand gestures, but with quiet consistency. Today I choose you again, knowing exactly who you are, flawed, growing, and mine. I promise to trust the man you've become, to forgive the man you were, and to love you fiercely through whatever comes next. You are my home, always." The rings were simple gold bands, engraved inside with the date of their first wedding, and today's date, 2 chapters. One story. When the officiant said, "You may kiss your bride," Alexander cupped Elena's face gently, as if she were the most precious thing he'd ever touched. The kiss was soft, lingering, full of promise rather than possession. The children cheered loudest. At the reception, speeches were short and heartfelt. Ethan stood on a chair to deliver his. "I used to think bridges were the strongest things you could build," he said seriously. "But Mom and Dad showed me that families are stronger, especially when they get broken and fixed again. Welcome to our family, Dad. For real this time," Ava added. "Love isn't just red and pink. Sometimes it's gold like the cracks that make things beautiful." Mia concluded with a line from her latest story, and the prince learned that the greatest treasure wasn't the kingdom he lost, but the one he found waiting with open hearts. Later, under the lights, Alexander and Elena danced slowly, foreheads touching. "Any regrets?" she asked, echoing a question from long ago. "Only that I didn't become this man sooner." He brushed a thumb across her cheek. "But I'm grateful for every day I get to be him now." She smiled. "We needed the years apart to become who we are together." The children joined them on the dance floor, turning it into a joyful tangle of arms and laughter. Much later, after guests had gone and the children were asleep inside, Alexander and Elena sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a shared blanket. The oak tree lights still glowed. He took her hand. "I sold the Pacific Heights house." She turned to him. "You loved that house." "I loved what I thought it represented. Status. Legacy. But it never felt like home. This does." He gestured to the modest Victorian behind them, warm with light and memories. "I closed yesterday. Put the proceeds into a trust college for the kids, medical research grants in your name, and a foundation for single parents in med school." Elena stared at him. "Alexander, you taught me what real legacy is. It's not marble floors and board seats. It's showing up. It's love that lasts." She leaned into him, head on his shoulder. "I wore the necklace every day this year," she said quietly, "even before I was ready to admit why." He kissed her temple, I noticed. Inside, on the mantel, Ava's latest painting hung the 5 of them under the oak tree, golden threads weaving through their joined hands. No cracks this time, just light shining through the places where they'd been mended. Above it, in Mia's careful handwriting on a small plaque, "Stronger where we healed." Alexander stood, pulling Elena gently to her feet. "Come to bed, Dot Grant." She laughed softly. "I do like the sound of that." Hand in hand, they turned off the tree lights and went inside. The house settled around them, 3 children breathing evenly down the hall, the quiet hum of a life rebuilt on surer ground. Outside, the old oak stood sentinel, roots deep, branches wide, holding the story of a love that broke, wandered, and found its way home. Not perfect, not easy, but whole. And that, they both knew, was the rarest kind of happy ending. The late summer sun slanted across the backyard, turning the old oak's leaves into a canopy of liquid gold. Laughter rose in waves as 14-year-old Ava chased her younger half-brother Theodore around the grass with a water balloon. Theo, now 5, all blonde curls and boundless energy, shrieked with delight, dodging behind Ethan, who pretended to be a human shield while secretly reloading his own arsenal. Mia, ever the peacemaker turned strategist, directed operations from the porch steps, notebook in hand. Ava, flank left Ethan. Don't waste ammo on friendly fire. Elena watched from the kitchen window. drying her hands on a dish towel, a quiet smile on her face. The house had changed over the years. Walls knocked through for a bigger kitchen. A sunroom added for Ava's growing art studio. Bookshelves overflowing in every corner, but it still felt like the same heartbeat, warm, lived in, loud with love. Alexander appeared behind her, arms sliding around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. "Water war still in full swing?" he asked, voice low and amused. "Phase 3, she confirmed. "Theo's holding the hose now. Casualties imminent." He laughed softly, the sound rumbling against her back. "Should we intervene?" "Absolutely not. Natural consequences build character." They stood like that for a moment, watching their blended chaos unfold. Theodore Victoria's son spent every other weekend and most holidays here now. The arrangement had started stiff and formal, but 5 years of consistent effort from Alexander and Elena's quiet grace had turned obligation into genuine family. Theo called her Lena and saved his best drawings for her fridge. The screen door banged open and Mia burst in, flushed and dripping. "Mom, Dad." "Theo says he's too little for rules, but he totally ambushed me with the sprinkler." Alexander turned, wiping a streak of water from her cheek. "Sounds like grounds for a tribunal. You want to be prosecutor." Mia grinned, already wrote the opening statement. She dashed back out, yelling, "Court in session in 5 minutes." Elena raised an eyebrow. "You taught her tribunal." "I plead the 5th. Outside. Ethan had declared a ceasefire to set up the backyard projector for movie night. Ava strung fairy lights higher in the oak branches, standing on a ladder with the confidence of someone who'd grown 6 inches in the last year and now rivaled her father in height. Alexander stepped onto the porch, surveying the scene with the same wonder he still wore some evenings, like he couldn't quite believe this life was his. Elena joined him, leaning against the railing. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years since the wedding," she said. He threaded his fingers through hers. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes like I've lived my whole life in this backyard." Theo ran up then, hose abandoned, face serious. "Dad, can we watch the space movie tonight? The one with the black hole?" "Interstellar," Alexander crouched. "You sure it's long and a little sad in parts?" Theo nodded solemnly. "Mia says it's about love being stronger than time, and I like that." Alexander ruffled his curls. "Interstellar it is." As the sun dipped lower, the family gathered on blankets and lawn chairs under the oak. Bowls of popcorn appeared. Lemonade was poured, and the projector hummed to life. Halfway through the film, Ava leaned over to Elena. "Mom, I got the acceptance letter today." Elena's heart skipped. Early decision. Ava nodded, eyes bright. Rhode Island School of Design. Full scholarship. Elena pulled her into a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you." Alexander reached across, squeezing Ava's hand. "Your portfolio blew them away. That series on family fractures and golden repairs, they called it, mature beyond your years." Ava ducked her head, pleased. "It's basically our story. I figured if I could paint the cracks, maybe other people would see the beauty in theirs too." Ethan, sprawled on his stomach, looked up from his laptop. "I heard back from MIT yesterday. Waitlisted." Alexander's face fell for a split second before Ethan grinned. "Kidding. Accepted. Early action." Cheers erupted. Theo jumped up, knocking over popcorn in excitement. Mia raised her glass of lemonade. "To the smartest family in San Francisco." Glasses clinked. Later, when the credits rolled and the stars came out sharp and clear above the city, the younger ones drifted inside Theo, half asleep, on Alexander's shoulder. Mia trailing with her notebook full of new story ideas. The older three lingered. Ethan closed his laptop. I've been thinking about majors. Biomedical engineering. I want to design better heart monitors, ones that predict events earlier, so fewer people end up on mom's table. Elena felt tears prick. That's ambitious. Alexander's voice was rough. It's perfect. Ava pulled a small canvas from her bag wrapped in brown paper. She handed it to Elena and Alexander. Anniversary gift, 5 years. They unwrapped it together. It was them all 7 now, including Theo under this same oak. Golden threads wove through their figures, stronger and brighter than ever. At the roots of the tree, subtle cracks glowed with repaired light. In the sky above, faint constellations formed the shape of a heart. Elena traced the brushstrokes with trembling fingers. It's us, Alexander said quietly. Exactly us. Ava shrugged, but her eyes shone. Kintsugi family. Ethan added, stronger in the broken places. Umpuas. Mia's voice floated from the doorway, where she'd been watching. And the light gets in through the cracks. They hung the painting above the fireplace the next morning, right where the first fractured heart drawing had once lived. That afternoon, Alexander found Elena in her home office, now shared space, since he'd stepped back from day-to-day CEO duties years ago. He consulted, mentored, funded startups focused on social good. But his real work happened here. School pickups, bedtime negotiations, Saturday pancakes. He set a mug of tea on her desk. Thinking about the fellowship in Geneva, he asked. She'd been offered a 6-month visiting professorship teaching advanced cardiothoracic techniques, leading research on post-trauma heart recovery. I want to say yes, she admitted, but leaving for half a year. We'll come with you. She looked up. All of us. School's portable for the younger two. Ethan and Ava are heading to college anyway. We'll rent a place near the lake. Make it an adventure. Elena searched his face. You'd uproot everything again. I'd follow you anywhere. Elena, you know that. She stood, wrapping her arms around him. Then let's go. All of us. That night, they gathered the children now spanning ages 5 to 14 and told them over ice cream sundaes. Theo cheered at the idea of Swiss chocolate. Mia immediately started plotting a story about a family of explorers. Ethan researched international schools on his phone. Ava sketched the Alps from imagination. Later, in their bedroom, Elena and Alexander lay awake, window open to the summer breeze. Do you ever think about the old timeline? She asked softly. The one where none of this happened? Sometimes, he admitted. And then I look at them at you, and I can't imagine any version of life without this one. She turned to him, tracing the faint scar hidden beneath his shirt, the one she'd sewn closed twice. Your heart's stronger now. So is mine. They kissed, slow and familiar, the kind of kiss built on years of choosing each other every single day. Down the hall, 5 children slept under one roof, some by blood, all by love. Outside, the oak tree stood sentinel, roots deeper, branches wider, holding their story gently in its arms. Not a fairy tale, a real one, scarred, golden, luminous, the kind that endures. The lake house in Geneva sat quiet under a blanket of fresh snow, windows glowing gold against the December dusk. Inside, the scent of mulled wine and roasting chestnuts mingled with pine from the enormous tree that dominated the living room, decorated over 3 chaotic, laughter-filled days by a family that now spanned 3 continents and multiple time zones. Elena stood at the kitchen island, sleeves rolled up, directing the final preparations for Christmas Eve dinner with the calm authority of a surgeon and the warmth of a woman who had finally stopped bracing for loss. Alexander entered from the terrace, cheeks ruddy from the cold, carrying an armful of firewood. At 57, the silver in his hair had won, but his eyes were brighter than they'd been in his 30s. The heart that had nearly failed him twice now beat strong and steady, thanks to Elena's skill, his changed life, and the daily purpose of loving well. Theo and Mia are building the epic snow fort, he announced, dumping the logs by the hearth. Ethan's refereeing. Ava's documenting it all for her next exhibit. Elena smiled, as long as no one needs stitches before dinner. Famous last words. The front door burst open in a swirl of snow and teenage voices. Theo, now 15, lanky and blonde, stomped in first, shaking flakes from his curls. Mia, 19 and home from Oxford on break, followed with her camera slung around her neck. Ethan, 21 and finishing his master's at Stanford via remote this semester, brought up the rear, carrying a triumphant grin and a half-melted snowball. We declared a truce, Mia announced. Theo surrendered after I threatened to publish his surrender speech. Theo rolled his eyes. Creative license. It was a strategic retreat. Ava appeared from the studio upstairs, paint still on her fingers despite washing up. At 24, she had just opened her second solo show in New York, golden-threaded canvases exploring family, rupture, and repair that critics called luminous acts of forgiveness. Dinner smells incredible, she said, kissing Elena's cheek. Need help? Set the table with your dad. The others will be here soon. The others arrived in a joyful rush. An hour later, Elena's mother, now 80 and still sharp as ever, flown in from Chicago. Alexander's sister and her family from London, and perhaps most surprisingly Victoria with her husband and their 2 younger children. The co-parenting relationship had evolved from tense necessity to genuine, if careful, friendship. Theodore spent equal time in both homes now, and holidays were shared when possible. Victoria hugged Elena at the door, a real hug, not the air kiss of old society days. Thank you for having us, she said quietly. This place is magical. Your family. Elena replied simply, and meant it. Dinner was loud and long. 3 tables pushed together to fit everyone. Candles flickering. Stories overlapping. Ethan talked about his new implantable heart monitor prototype, already in clinical trials. Ava showed photos of her exhibit opening. Mia read a chapter from her debut novel, just sold to a major publisher, a coming-of-age story about a girl with 2 homes and 1 unbreakable heart. Theo, ever the performer, recounted his school play, disaster turned triumph. Laughter rolled like waves. After dessert, the younger ones dragged Theo outside for night sledding on the hill behind the house. The adults lingered over coffee and mulled wine by the fire. Alexander stood, tapping his glass lightly. I know we don't usually do speeches, he began, but this is our 10th Christmas in this house, and I have some things to say. The room quieted. 10 years ago, I almost lost everything that mattered because I didn't know what mattered. I thought legacy was a company balance sheet, a name on a building, bloodlines that looked good on paper. I was wrong. He looked at Elena, eyes soft. I hurt the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. I walked away from a marriage because I was too proud to admit I was scared. And then, by some grace I still don't deserve, she saved my life. Twice. Once in an operating room. Once by letting me earn my way back into hers and our children's. His voice grew thicker. You all know the story. But what you might not know is how every single day since, Elena has taught me what love actually looks like. Not the grand gestures, the quiet ones. Showing up for school plays when she's jet-lagged from saving lives. Listening to teenage heartbreak at 2 a.m. Choosing forgiveness when anger would be easier. He turned to the children, young adults now, scattered around the room. And you 5, you are the proof that broken things can become beautiful. You've taught me more about courage, kindness, and creativity than any boardroom ever could. I am proud of you every single day. Not because of awards or acceptances or sales, but because you are good people. You are whole, loving, resilient people. Elena's eyes glistened. Alexander raised his glass. To second chances. To family that chooses each other, again and again. To the woman who repaired my heart literally and figuratively. And to all of you, for making this life the richest one I could imagine. Glasses clinked. Tears were wiped discreetly. Later, when the house finally quieted and the fire burned low, Alexander and Elena stood on the terrace watching snow fall soft and steady over the lake. The children inside laughing over old photos felt close even from here. Elena leaned into him. 10 years, she murmured. Sometimes I still wake up surprised you're here. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. I still wake up grateful. She turned in his arms, snowflakes catching in her hair. Do you ever regret selling the company? He'd stepped down as CEO 8 years ago, selling his majority stake to fund the Grant Brooks Foundation focused on cardiac research, medical education for underrepresented students, and support for children of divorced parents. Not for a second. I traded a throne for a home. Best deal I ever made. Elena smiled. We're getting old, you know. He laughed. Speak for yourself. I'm aging like fine wine. She touched the laugh lines around his eyes. These look good on you. They kissed slow, familiar, still sparking after all these years. Inside, Ava's voice rose in mock outrage over some teenage photo. Ethan's deeper laugh joined. Mia narrated dramatically. Theo protested. Footsteps thundered. Alexander rested his forehead against Elena's. Listen to that, he whispered. That's the sound of everything I almost lost. Elena squeezed his hand. And everything we chose to keep. They stood there a long time. Snow falling silently around them. 2 people who had walked through fire and come out holding each other tighter. Later, in bed with the window cracked to let in the cold alpine air, Elena traced the faint scar on his chest. Your heart still beating strong? Stronger every year, he said, because it's full. She smiled in the dark. Mine too. Down the hall, 5 extraordinary young people slept under one roof, some by blood, all by unbreakable choice. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in quiet white. Inside, the house held its history gently, every argument and reconciliation, every tear and triumph, every ordinary day that had built this extraordinary life. Not a fairy tale. A love story. The kind that doesn't end with happily ever after, but continues day after day, choice after choice, writing new chapters in gold across the mended places. And that, they both knew as sleep claimed them, was the most beautiful kind of forever. The autumn light over San Francisco Bay was the color of warm honey, spilling through the wide windows of the rebuilt Victorian home that had once been modest and was now gracefully expanded, still the same heartbeat, just with more rooms for grandchildren and visiting artists, writers and engineers. Elena Grant, M.D., now 64, stood in the sunroom that had become her study, reviewing notes for the keynote she would deliver tomorrow at the International Cardiac Symposium, named in her honor. Her hair had gone elegantly silver, pulled back in a loose knot, and the lines around her eyes spoke of decades spent laughing more than frowning. The four-heart necklace still rested against her collarbone, worn smooth by time. Alexander, 72, and moving a little slower these days, entered carrying 2 mugs of tea. His steps were careful. He'd had a knee replacement last year, but his smile was the same one that had won her back all those years ago. Quiet, steady, utterly devoted. "Chamomile for the keynote nerves," he said, handing her the mug. "I'm not nervous," she protested mildly, "just reflective." He settled into the armchair beside her desk, the one he'd occupied for thousands of evenings like this. 20 years since we renewed our vows under the oak. 32 since the first time. Hard to believe. She looked out at the garden. The old oak still stood, wider and stronger, its branches heavy with new growth. Beneath it, a bronze sculpture Ava had created years ago caught the light 5 abstract figures, intertwined with golden threads, now surrounded by smaller ones' grandchildren. The house was quiet this afternoon, a rare occurrence. The 5 children were scattered across the world, but converging tomorrow for the symposium weekend. Ava, 34, lived in Brooklyn with her wife and their 2 adopted daughters, vibrant girls aged 6 and 8, who called Elena Nanalina and Alexander Poppy. Ava's latest retrospective had just closed at the Whitney. Her Golden Repair series now hung in museums worldwide. Ethan, 31, had married his college sweetheart 3 years ago. They lived in Boston with their newborn son, Elena, and Alexander's first biological grandchild. Ethan's company had revolutionized early detection cardiac implants. The device now saved thousands of lives annually, quietly dedicated to the grandmother who'd inspired it. Mia, 29, was in London finishing the film adaptation of her 3rd novel. Her stories, always about fractured families finding wholeness, had touched millions. She was single by choice for now, traveling the world collecting new tales. But she FaceTimed home religiously. Theo, 25, had just completed his master's in environmental policy in Copenhagen, blonde and earnest, like his mother Victoria, who remained a cordial part of their extended circle. He split holidays between both families and had become the bridge neither parent had expected. And then there was the youngest surprise, Isabella, now 16, born 10 years ago when Elena and Alexander had thought their child-rearing days were behind them. A late, miraculous gift, after years of accepting their family, was complete. Bella, with her mother's dark curls and her father's gray eyes, was currently at orchestra practice, cello case slung over her shoulder like a backpack. The front door slammed Bella home early. "Mom, get down. You won't believe what happened." She burst into the sunroom, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "Mr. Chen moved the Beethoven concerto to the spring program, so I get the solo." Elena set down her tea and opened her arms. Bella folded into them, still young enough for hugs, but old enough to pretend she wasn't. Alexander ruffled her hair. "We knew you'd earn it." "Everyone's coming tomorrow, right?" Bella asked. Aunt Ava promised to record it for her next installation. "Everyone," Elena confirmed. "Flights are all landing by evening." That night, the house began to fill. Ava and her family arrived first, 2 little girls thundering up the stairs to claim their favorite guest room bunks. Hugs were fierce. The girls presented handmade cards for Nana and Poppy's big speech day. Ethan and his wife followed with the baby 3 months old, tiny fist curled around Alexander's finger the moment he was passed over. Elena breathed in that newborn scent and felt time fold this child, carrying echoes of the triplets she'd once held alone. Mia came next, straight from Heathrow, dropping her suitcase to envelop Bella in dramatic storytelling about London fog and film set chaos. Theo landed last, hugging Alexander extra tight, something quiet and grateful passing between them that needed no words. Dinner was chaos and perfection. Long tables pushed together again, laughter overlapping, stories new and old. The grandchildren chased each other under the oak while the adults lingered over wine. Later, when the youngest were asleep and the older ones gathered around the fire pit with hot chocolate, Ethan raised his glass. To Mom and Dad, for showing us what love looks like when it's tested and chooses to stay. Ava added softly, and for teaching us that broken doesn't mean beyond repair. Mia smiled, to golden cracks. Theo lifted his mug, to family you choose and family that chooses you back. Bella, curled against Elena's side, whispered, I'm glad you fixed everything. Alexander met Elena's eyes across the flames. In them, she saw the same wonder he'd worn for decades, gratitude, that this life, the noisy, imperfect, luminous one, was theirs. Much later, after the house settled into sleeping breaths, Elena and Alexander walked the garden path one last time before bed. The oak leaves rustled overhead. Alexander stopped beneath the sculpture, hand resting on the cool bronze. I used to think I needed a dynasty, he said quietly, a name in steel and glass. But this is the legacy. Elena slipped her arm through his. Look what we built instead. They stood in silence, listening to the faint sound of a cello drifting from Bella's open window, her practicing the concerto's slow movement, notes rising pure and clear into the night. Alexander turned to her. Any regrets? None, she said, not one. He brushed a kiss across her temple. Me neither. They walked back inside hand in hand, turning off lights as they went. In the hallway, framed photos lined the walls, weddings and graduations, hospital births and backyard water fights, first steps and last ones before college move-ins. A visual map of years, earned through showing up, forgiving, choosing. At the top of the stairs, Elena paused at Ava's newest piece, commissioned for their 50th wedding anniversary next year. It hadn't been unveiled yet, but Ava had let them peek the entire family tree rendered in gold and light, every branch strong, every scar glowing. Alexander squeezed her hand. We're the luckiest people alive. Elena smiled. We worked hard for that luck. They went to bed in the same room they'd shared for decades, window cracked to let in the cool bay air. Outside, the oak stood watch over the house that love had rebuilt roots deeper than ever, branches reaching toward whatever came next. Inside, two people who had once shattered each other slept tangled together, hearts beating in the same steady rhythm they'd found again all those years ago. Not because it was easy, because it was worth it, every single day, and that after everything was the truest happy ending of all. The story of Elena and Alexander Grant didn't end. It simply continued golden, mended, radiant into whatever beautiful ordinary days lay ahead.